Carol Deering and her life before the tragedy. Carol Deering was an incredibly vibrant young woman, distinguished by her energy, drive for self-realization, and an endless desire to help others. She came from a small town where her family was highly respected by their neighbors. From a young age, Carol exhibited special traits. She was open, empathetic, and always ready to lend a helping hand. Her natural sense of empathy allowed her to deeply understand other people, setting her apart from her peers. Even in her early years, she actively participated in community initiatives that helped local residents solve everyday and social issues. Her ability to empathize, along with her natural charisma, attracted people to her, and she quickly became a leader among her peers. During her school years, Carol demonstrated remarkable leadership abilities. She was actively involved in various activities, from school theater productions to charity events. Her teachers often highlighted her dedication to her studies and her willingness to help others, which made her one of the school's most valued students. In all her endeavors, Carol was driven by a genuine desire to improve the lives of those around her. Her love for people and inner strength were the foundation of her character, helping her overcome any challenges she faced. In college, Carol chose to study social sciences, further revealing her potential. Her decision was driven not only by personal interest but also by a desire to contribute to society by helping those in difficult circumstances. She was always at the forefront of volunteer movements, particularly those focused on supporting women and children in crisis situations. Her volunteer work spanned a variety of areas, from providing psychological support to organizing charity events. She sincerely believed that change in the world begins with the small, but consistent, efforts of each individual. In addition to her studies, Carol always found time to socialize with friends and participate in social initiatives. Her friends admired her zest for life and her readiness to help anyone in need. She often became the person people turned to for advice or support. Her friendships were filled with mutual understanding and trust. No matter where she was, whether at school, at home, or at work, Carol always found a way to do something useful for others. Carol's dream was to become a qualified psychologist. She wanted to use her knowledge and skills to support people during difficult times in their lives. This desire reflected her deep-seated need to bring good into the world and help others, especially since her personal experiences motivated her to pursue this noble path. She saw her profession not just as a job but as a life mission, to improve the lives of others and offer them moral and emotional support. But sadly, none of her friends or loved ones could have predicted that her bright dreams and plans would suddenly be cut short by the tragic events that would change her life forever. Ted Bundy, the hidden threat. Ted Bundy was a man whose image aroused no suspicion, which only heightened his danger. He appeared to be a pleasant, educated, and charismatic individual who made a positive impression on those around him. Many saw him as a model of success. He excelled in university, was actively involved in politics, and had many friends who valued him for his sociability, openness, and sense of humor. His appearance and behavior inspired trust and likability, yet behind this outward mask lurked a completely different, dark personality that occasionally revealed itself. Bundy led a double life for a long time, becoming more dangerous with each passing year. Despite his outward attractiveness and impressive intellect, his inner world was filled with contradictions, hatred, and hidden menace. He had the ability to gain people's trust, which allowed him to remain unnoticed among his acquaintances and friends. This ability to manipulate others using his looks and erudition became his most powerful weapon. Bundy could adapt to different situations, carefully choosing his words and gestures to win sympathy and respect. He always knew when to present himself in the best possible light, appearing innocent and harmless. But behind these tactics lay a cruel truth. His actions had a ruthless side. He used his charisma to cunningly gain the trust of his victims, allowing him to easily manipulate them. An important aspect of his behavior was that his methods were always meticulously thought out and planned. Bundy acted coldly, fully aware of each of his steps, and managed to instill a sense of safety in people, which in reality concealed danger. He wasn't just a criminal. He was a manipulator who convinced those around him of his innocence, always maintaining control over the situation. His disturbing presence was like a shadow that slowly consumed everything in its path, leaving behind only chaos and pain. Over time, it seemed that his personality began to change. Growing confidence and a sense of impunity only fueled his desire for control. He viewed his victims as toys to be manipulated, a sign of the deep pathology developing within him. Bundy became a master in the art of deception, and his ability to communicate with people impressed not only his acquaintances but also strangers. In clubs, at parties, and in university settings, his skills were impeccable. Everyone was captivated by his charisma and keen perception. But this was merely a facade for a creature that ruthlessly preyed on its victims. His ability to disguise his true nature allowed him to commit crimes, leaving behind only traces that were difficult to connect to his identity. Over time, society failed to suspect that behind the attractive exterior could hide a person capable of heinous acts. Bundy embodied the danger that walked unnoticed beside those who believed in his virtue. His invisible threat continued to grow, evolving alongside his crimes, and this dark side of his personality became increasingly dominant. The day of the abduction, a random step into the unknown. That day, Carol could not have imagined that her typical day off would take a tragic turn in her life. She had planned to spend time with friends at the park, where they often relaxed after a week of studies, sharing stories and laughing over shared memories. The park was their favorite spot, where Carol always felt safe and at ease. The shade of the trees, the smell of fresh grass, and the sound of birds created a peaceful atmosphere. Carol cherished the time spent with her close friends, as these were moments when they could talk about future plans, share dreams, and simply enjoy the present. As Carol walked through the park, she noticed a stranger who appeared to need help. The man was carrying a heavy box and looked as though he had been injured. His face reflected desperation. His polite behavior and friendly demeanor evoked sympathy in Carol. Always ready to help those in need, she decided to approach him and offer her assistance. Carol had no idea that her natural kindness and willingness to help could compromise her safety. She came closer and asked if she could be of any assistance. The stranger quickly seized the opportunity, and their conversation seemed entirely casual. She didn't feel any threat. His words sounded sincere, and his manner was friendly. Carol helped him lift the box to his car, and in that moment, when they were both focused on the task, everything changed. However, it all happened so quickly that Carol didn't even have time to realize what was going on. As soon as she approached the car, the stranger's behavior abruptly shifted. His face hardened, and his voice became menacing. Carol suddenly found herself in a situation she could not have predicted. Everything she had considered safe instantly turned into a danger. She felt her heart freeze as she realized that her kindness had become a vulnerability. Thinking back on all the moments when she had trusted others, she couldn't believe she had fallen into a trap. The stranger, whom she had thought harmless, had suddenly become a threat. Every instinct told her to run, but the situation had already spiraled out of control. In that moment, as her thoughts whirled in chaos, Carol realized that real danger could hide behind a mask of kindness. Her carefree day off, which should have been filled with joy and laughter, had transformed into a terrible nightmare. This random step into the unknown, the desire to help a stranger, had become fatal, as her life was now at risk. Carol tried to find a way out, but her attempts to escape no longer mattered. She was caught in the web that had closed around her. The aftermath of the disappearance. A tragic discovery. What happened after Carol's disappearance shocked and deeply unsettled her family, friends, and the entire community. When Carol failed to show up for a planned meeting with her friends and didn't respond to their calls, a sense of fear and uncertainty began to take hold. She had always been an extremely responsible, active, and communicative young woman, so her sudden absence couldn't be ignored by those close to her. This left them wondering, could something terrible have happened? Carol's friends, gripped by panic, immediately reached out to the police for help. They described the details of her disappearance, trying to recall every minute of her last outing. The police, responding swiftly to the alarming signs, launched an urgent search. Law enforcement officers quickly headed to the place where Carol was last seen and began scouring the area, hoping to find any trace of her. Soon, the police discovered that Carol's disappearance was not a random incident. Investigators, analyzing the available evidence, quickly realized that her case might be connected to other similar disappearances of women that had occurred in the area over the past few months. Local news outlets had repeatedly mentioned these mysterious disappearances, further heightening the anxiety among residents. Investigators started linking different cases, carefully examining the similarities and details that might point to a single perpetrator. At the site of the disappearance, small but crucial pieces of evidence were found, such as Carol's personal belongings, which helped investigators identify a potential suspect. Each new piece of information and testimony added weight to the investigation. The police meticulously analyzed surveillance footage, attempting to piece together the events of that day, and interviewed all possible witnesses. Special attention was given to details that might lead to the person responsible for her disappearance. News of Carol's disappearance quickly spread throughout the town, sparking a wave of fear and concern. People began sharing information, holding meetings to discuss the situation, and organizing search parties. Everyone was determined to find Carol and bring her home. The community felt a sense of unity, as everyone tried to support each other during this difficult time. The search became a matter of honor for the local residents, who believed that even the smallest detail could be the key to bringing her back. The start of the investigation. A hunt for the truth. Following Carol's disappearance, the police launched a large-scale investigation, utilizing every available resource to uncover any clues that might indicate her whereabouts. Investigative teams worked tirelessly, interviewing witnesses and analyzing various data. Carol's friends and family actively cooperated with the investigators, providing detailed information about her life, habits, and social circle. Every detail, no matter how small, could be the key to solving this mystery. The community also joined in the search. Town residents took to the streets, distributing flyers with Carol's picture, hoping for any lead on her location. The park where Carol was last seen became a meeting point for volunteers organizing search parties. Conversations in local cafes and on the streets took on a new urgency, as everyone was interested in uncovering the truth. The police soon discovered that Carol's disappearance occurred under circumstances similar to those surrounding the disappearances of several other young women in the region. This revelation heightened suspicions of a serial pattern in these cases. A growing belief emerged that a dangerous perpetrator was at large in the area, sparking widespread media attention. The public began exerting pressure on law enforcement, demanding decisive action, and with each passing day without progress, the anxiety among residents only intensified. One of the key developments in the investigation came when some witnesses recalled seeing a suspicious vehicle near the park on the day Carol disappeared. This became the first significant piece of evidence in the case, helping the police develop a preliminary action plan. They worked swiftly to trace the vehicle's license plates and broaden the list of potential suspects. Investigators also enlisted forensic experts to analyze all available data, including surveillance footage, to track the route of the suspicious vehicle. Information about Carol's disappearance spread rapidly through the media, prompting more people to come forward with testimonies. Each new fact gradually contributed to forming a clearer picture, though many details were still missing. Everyone held out hope that the truth about Carol's fate would soon be uncovered, and that her life could be restored. The trial, justice, and accountability. After the arrest of the suspect, a long and complex trial began, drawing significant public and media attention. The case of Carol Deering was discussed across all media platforms, and the public eagerly awaited the outcome. Prosecutors, armed with extensive evidence, witness testimonies, and the results of the investigation presented in the courtroom, aimed to prove the guilt of the accused. They presented meticulously gathered data that linked the suspect to the crimes, including Carol's disappearance. During the trial, the defense tried to challenge the evidence, arguing that it was either incomplete or questionable. However, many of the facts presented by the prosecutors were irrefutable. The atmosphere in the courtroom was tense. Carol's relatives and those of other victims, present at every hearing, hoped for a just verdict, which they believed was the only possible outcome of this prolonged process. Every new fact and every testimony confirmed that the defendant acted deliberately and methodically, concealing his crimes over a long period. The courtroom proceedings took place in an emotionally charged environment. The families of the victims experienced painful moments as the testimonies reopened the wounds of their loss. It was not only the facts that were significant, but also the human stories that illustrated how the tragedy had impacted the lives of those left behind. The prosecutors worked to reflect this reality as much as possible, giving a voice to the victims and their families. As a result of the lengthy trial, the suspect was found guilty on multiple counts. The courtroom evidence, including witness testimonies, surveillance footage, and the results of a thorough investigation, pointed to the undeniable guilt of the perpetrator. The prosecutors put forth every effort to ensure that all aspects of the case were examined and every element of the crime was uncovered. They also emphasized the importance of this case, not only for Carol but for the other victims whose stories had remained in the shadows. A crucial element of the trial was the expert testimony that helped to understand the psychological profile of the criminal. These experts explained how individuals like the accused manipulate those around them, using their charismatic traits to evade punishment. This allowed investigators and the court to see how carefully the suspect had planned his actions and manipulated those around him to avoid consequences. The final verdict brought great relief to the victims' families. The perpetrator was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. This sentence symbolized not only justice for the families, but also an attempt to put an end to a series of horrific events that had long gone unresolved. The trial marked a critical step in the healing process for the families who had endured loss, while also sending a strong message to society about the seriousness of such crimes. This case served as an example of how law enforcement can respond to violence and the disappearance of women, raising awareness about public safety concerns. Societal impact. The legacy of Carol Deering. The disappearance and tragedy of Carol Deering, along with the cases of other women who fell victim to the same criminal, served as a serious wake-up call for society. These events highlighted the urgent need for significant changes in the realm of public safety and protection, especially for women. Following the investigation and trial, society became more aware of the potential dangers that could arise even in familiar and seemingly safe environments. As a result, security measures were significantly strengthened in many public spaces, including parks, universities, and other high-traffic areas. Additionally, new programs were introduced to raise awareness about the risks people may face in their everyday lives. Public organizations that focused on women's rights and support for crime victims began working more actively, organizing seminars and training sessions. These initiatives helped individuals learn how to recognize dangerous situations and taught basic self-defense skills. Carol Deering's name became a symbol for many who had lost loved ones to violence. Deeply affected by her tragedy, her family established a foundation aimed at supporting families who have faced similar tragedies. The foundation actively engages in educational programs designed to teach young people to be more cautious and vigilant to avoid such dangers. These programs include safety lectures, lessons on recognizing manipulation, and the importance of communicating with trusted adults about potentially dangerous situations. Carol's tragedy deeply altered society, forcing it to reflect on how crucial it is to pay attention to the behavior of those around us and to ensure the safety of everyone. She became an inspiration for activists fighting for justice, and her legacy lives on in the hearts of those who continue to stand against violence and for women's rights. Society has come to understand that preventing violence and protecting vulnerable groups is not just the responsibility of the state but of every citizen. This movement for safety and justice, sparked by Carol's tragedy, continues to grow, inspiring new generations to actively participate in the fight for a better and safer world. Conclusion: a light in the darkness. Carol Deering's story is not just a tragic tale of disappearance and crime. It is also a profound example of how human kindness and the sincere desire to help others can be turned against us if we are not cautious enough. Carol was always eager to support those around her, and this became a defining trait for which she was loved and respected. However, there are individuals in this world who cruelly exploit the trust of others for their selfish purposes. This forces us to seriously reflect on the importance of self-protection, vigilance, and attentiveness toward those around us. The memory of Carol lives on not only among her family and friends but also among many who have heard her story. She has become a symbol, reminding society of the need to support one another and not be indifferent to the problems of others. Her life, though brief, became a true inspiration for many people, calling them to action in making the world a safer and better place for all. Now, anyone who hears her story has the opportunity to take important lessons from the past and apply them to prevent similar tragedies in the future. The light that Carol ignited through her life continues to illuminate the path for those who seek justice, change, and safety in society. Her story serves as a reminder that, while we cannot always control circumstances, we can influence how we respond to them and the values we uphold in our lives. We must remember Carol and the other victims who suffered from crime and ensure that their lives were not in vain. Her legacy lives on in the hearts of those who continue to fight for justice and safety in the world, inspiring us to take action and create positive change. Let us come together so that the light of Carol Deering becomes an inspiration for new generations, encouraging them to do good and support one another, for only together can we overcome the darkness.